and it sucks. The winning streak that we had, the little juice that we had as Texans fans, is it wasn't even there. So in this episode, we're gonna talk the Texans' recent loss to the Jetsons, the Jetsons, the recent loss to the Jets on Halloween night. Like, subscribe, share. This is Sports Social Live. Let's get it. So as we get into this talk, I'm not somber. I just know what we are. We are what we are. The Texans are that team that just cannot get one, the offensive line together, two, second halves. The Texans went into this game with issues. They came out of this game with issues, right? We knew that the offensive line was a problem, and it just stayed our problem. There was no kind of will to fix it. There was no kind of tenacity to fix it. Starting Kenyon Green this game showed that they did not want to fix the problem. Even though Kenyon Green is a pseudo backup, it was a bad game for D'Amico to let Kenyon go on the field and Slowick. It just was not a good look for the Texans today. The Texans' offensive line is a complete and utter disaster. CJ Stroud ended up being sacked 8 times during the game. 8 times. And to cap that off, the Texans had a solid run game going. So that means he was sacked during almost every pass play, a third of the pass plays that he attempted. Kenyon Green, who was benched in the previous game, came back out and was ineffective. He had a slight glimmer of hope, but ultimately he went down for the count. The injury didn't even look like it was a super injury. Something that was I didn't see much from that his injury when he went out, but it was sad to see. He kind of went out sad. In this segment, we just want to focus on the offensive line struggle. And I know I've been talking about offensive line, but this is bad when you have such a high level quarterback and he's young and talented on his first deal. It reminds me of when David Carr was out there just running for his life. These guys cannot block to save their lives. Laramie Tunsil was bad. Shaq Mason bad. Juice Scruggs bad. They were getting beat. All five of the guys ended up getting beat at one point in this game, and it was just bad to see. The long-term implications of this offensive line being bad may go further. I mean, I don't see it getting any better. Sorry about the dog in the background. I don't see it getting any better this year. Just with everything that's going on, they are not. Come on, dudes, chill out. They are not doing well, as you can see. The Texans are having issues with the offensive line. Uh, it's abysmal. They cannot work. It's putrid, gross. I don't want to see it anymore. I've seen every word to describe this offensive line, but I don't want to see these guys play. They're too high paid. They're too highly paid. They lack tenacity. And the only bit of tenacity or grit that we saw from the Houston Texans offensive line was when Kendrick Green stepped onto the field and you saw some type of tenacity. But as the game went on, he ended up getting beat again. And that's probably why he wasn't starting. And they just all have to do better. So that's not me thrashing the Texas offensive line. I'm just giving you the facts. This is Sports Social Live. I love the Texans, all things Texans. I'm the Texans' #1 global fan, but I'll call it like I see it. And the Texans offensive line is just trash. And I think I have the wrong title up. That's a later title. But the Texans offensive line is just poor, utter trash. So, taking a look at that, ignore the dog squeaks and barks. So, taking a look at the offensive line being a disaster, you have paid these guys. Well, Laramie Tunsil is making upwards of $20 million to play left tackle, and he did not play up to that paycheck. Shaq Mason's paid, Tyus Howard's paid. All these guys are paid extremely high, and they are not living up to what they are getting paid. It is sad to see. sad to see. I want to track the Texas offensive line. We'll look it up. I forget how much they were paid, but I know it is paid. Laramie Tunsil's paid pretty high. Um, Pretty high this year. And one thing I want to talk about when we talk about being paid high, it's not just he's being paid high. I don't mind that, but being paid high and playing like they're playing definitely is a cause for concern. Laramie's Tunsil's cap hit this year is $25.8 million, and he has so far played like a $4 million player. I believe he's getting overpaid. If you look at the Texans and what they're doing, you just have to be mad at the guy. You have to be mad at this team. The right tackle, Titus Howard, $8 million. $8 million to walk on a like they do better and they're more aggressive in their fashion design than they are on the football field. Then they also have Shaq Mason being paid $5 million and Kenyon Green being paid $4 million. Kenyon Green being paid $4 million is unfathomable. He needs to be sent right down the street to Pearland High School, Shadow Creek, and just go play lineman for them with how he's played. And it's sad that his mom and dad are in the stands to watch him play. The Texas offensive line is a disaster, and they're going to get CJ Stroud hurt. You saw it in this game. He was on the ground multiple times, almost hurt. And I'm pissed off to see that you can't. Hey, at some point they got to forget the offsides calls. At some point you gotta just do something. Grab them by the collar, show them some tenacity. Keenan Williams and the Jets defensive line they were having a party on our offensive line. They were just cruise control chilling on them. Have some nuts, nut up. It was a sad day for the Houston, Texas offensive line. And speaking of a sad day, because I had some thoughts previously before, and I'm more venting, but keeping the facts straight. We have to look at the guy behind the clipboard, the guy that's on the field calling the plays, Bobby Slowick. Bobby Slowick is, I I'm not. I get that he can't control the offensive line's talent level. They were brought in by Nick Casario. He has to coach down to his personnel. But his reliance on sideways passes, which I think he improved. I give him a credit where he improved. And use of trick plays is stupid. He uses trick plays in terrible moments of the game. For instance, why would you have your Joe Mixon, your stud running back who had went for 80 plus, 90 plus yards, throw a halfback pass that was slow developing near the goal line? I'll pause right there. You had a stud of a running back who can make yards after contact. You had him throw a halfback pass, slow developing halfback pass near the goal line. That makes no complete sense. Yes, the offensive line is bad, but Joe Joe Mixon is back there and he's making plays. You can run it in with a quick zone. I would have been happy with that than kicking the field goal versus seeing a halfback pass. And you can say, hey, okay, Bobby cannot do anything because his offensive line. Yeah, he can. You have to, that's called coaching. You coach to your personnel. Obviously, the Texans play down to their personnel, but you coach to the personnel that you have. And clearly, you did not have personnel that can do the looping gadget plays. So Bobby has to do better. It's frustrating to see because it happens week in and week out. I don't know what they do in practice. They be like, yeah, that's the one. That's the one. Let's do a left and right pass. Let's do some crazy gadget play and make things happen. It's stupid at this point. The Texans have to do better. And Bobby Slowick is the main reason. He's on trial for me this year. How do you go? And another thing, like the highly paid offensive line, and you can get mad and frustrated about that. You have to think about Bobby was getting interviews last year, last offseason to be a head coach. There's no way that he can be a head coach if he cannot coach to his personnel. You can't blame the offensive line for the sideways gadget plays that you call. You can't blame the offensive line for a halfback pass near the goal line. And you can't blame the offensive line for 5-second developing plays when they're not good enough to block. They were put in the wrong position anyway. Some of those plays take so long to develop, and they just don't have the talent to block talented D lines. So when you don't have that talent, you have to throw quicker passes, keep your tight ends involved, and just rely on that run. The run stopped working. Okay, maybe try for Tank Dell. It just was a terrible call. Granted, the Jets defense and their defensive line and their DBs are incredible. They were playing phenomenal. Definitely a different team from that 2-6 team. This 3-6 team is a solid Jets team that will give anybody a run for their money. So I'm not mad at, like, you knew they were talented. You knew Sauce Gardner had the long arms, could jam a receiver across the field, will play tough. You knew that was going to happen. So if he was on Tank, Tank would have a hard time getting separation. You knew these things, but Bobby Slowick knew that as well. And Bobby Slowick had to make the play calls to put his people in position. And clearly he lacks in that ability. So we need Bobby Slowick. You're on trial. I have to see more from you, Bobby. I definitely have to see more from you. Because right now it does not look like you deserved that head coaching position. And you'll be lucky if you have a position as an offensive coordinator for this team. I but I think the team is nice. Nick Caserio's nice. D'Amico's nice. These are my guys. I love the guys. Of course, we didn't do what we needed to do. At some point, somebody has to make a business decision. At some point, somebody has to make a hard decision, and we need. I think this is when D'Amico cuts a hard line. Luckily, we have a bye week, and we'll talk about the look forward coming up pretty soon. So keeping with the trend of Bobby Slowick and what's going on, I like to take the time to just discuss our second half woes. I discussed this in my things to watch with this game, and it was frustrating to see nonetheless. The Texans come out, stall drives in the first half. We get on the board, it's 7-0 first half. They come out in the second half after they had been running almost 80, 90 yards with Mixon, come out in the second half and just lay an egg, lay a dud. The Texans lay a dud in the second half. And this has to be the fourth week in a row that they've come out and laid eggs in the second half. I knew what it was going to be. I think I tweeted out from my Sports Social TV X page. I was worried about the second half. They looked like they were stalling going into the half, and you saw it. You saw it. They came out and just stalled some more. The Jets gave the Texans every opportunity to be successful, and the Texans failed. Even Kaimi Fairbairn missed two field goals, two unlikely field goals. Very shocking from the Texans. I mean, they gave us opportunities. They literally should have been up 28-13, to be honest. They were giving us opportunities and we failed at those opportunities. But as you look at the game and how it unfolded, you knew going into the second half the Texans were going to go and be Texans again. They were going to go and kind of just be lackadaisical and come out. I don't know what happened to Bobby Slowick. Maybe it was a confidence. He thought something was working, but Bobby Slowick did not do well in that second half. Let me change the screen really quickly. Bobby Slowick did not do well in the second half. It was not a good play. And when you're playing against teams and you're not getting things going in the second half, nor are you winning the battles in the special teams victory, in the special teams area, you're going to take a loss. And that's what happened to the Texans. That's exactly what happened to the Texans. One of the stats that I like to see in the second half is that the Texans only scored field goals in the second half. When I say they only scored field goals in the second half, the drives were just dull drives. Tank Dell had a good play, but just dull. I don't understand how this team is gonna be successful in the AFC. I mean, luckily we have a big margin of a big lead in the AFC South, but they can't go forward like this. And the schedule going forward for the Texans is a difficult one. I mean, to be honest, and the Texans weren't far off from the Jets in any of the categories. The Texans total yards, they were 322 total yards to the Jets 293. Passing yards, the Jets got us by 60 yards. They Jets had 193, the Texans had 135. Rushing yards, the Jets only had 100, the Texans had 187. I mean, first downs, the Texans won the first down mark. Third down efficiency went to the Jets. The Jets, of course, got two fourth downs. It just was a bad game. But the sacks allowed was just terrible for the Texans offensive line. It was a bad game all around. But speaking of bad game all around and what impact a lot of things, I see that Bobby Slowick cannot outcoach missing people. Bobby Slowick cannot. D'Amico can. D'Amico showed you that when he had 5 starters out, and he still had 2 starters out. When D'Amico had 5 starters out, he was able to call a successful defense. His defense this week was successful. The Texans' defense was you can hold the best you can hope for against a talented offense is a 21, a 3-score game. Let's be honest. The score they scored 21. I mean, that's a solid effort from a defense that you can only that's going back on the field. So I'm not mad at what the defense did. It was only a matter of time against a high caliber quarterback, a high caliber and 2 high caliber receivers, Wilson and Devontae Adams. So they were going to get scored on. You have 2 backups. You had a backup linebacker. You have DBs that have been susceptible all year. So I'm not mad at what the defense had done. It shows you that when they're missing weapons, they can be serviceable. The Texans offense, on the other hand, cannot. Bobby Slowick cannot coach a serviceable offense with players missing. Granted, Nico Collins and Stephon Diggs are missing. But that is what coaching is supposed to do. You need to coach the teams to be successful. Bobby can't coach out of the hole. D'Amico can. So we have to figure out a way to work out of this weird state. I don't know what the mental block is for Bobby Slowick, what the mental block is for the Texans, but missing Stephon Diggs, Nico Collins, even Damian Pierce on kick return, Ward on defense, Aziz Shire on defense. Those are 2 pieces that are missing, but I think more so Aziz Shire on defense. But on offense, you're missing your 2 stud receivers. That spelled the recipe for disaster for the Texans. I believe Nico Collins coming back will be great. Of course, he's a big target, solid, can make the plays. But let's be clear, the Nico Collins coming back to the Texans won't be much if the offensive line can't block. If they can't scheme up good plays, if they're running gadget plays, it won't be much. Nico Collins will be there. Those plays will get made, but you're going against the Detroit Lions on Sunday Night Football, the best offensive country bumpkin offensive line in the league. They have a Hawaiian on there or Asian Pacific Islander on there. That's gonna go crazy. I love watching the Detroit Lions play, and I just don't see. I wish we had that Detroit Lions offensive line. I wish we did. We have one offensive line. Our offensive line is just sad fashionistas. They're fashionistas. They're just sad, fashionable guys that wear purses and scarves and happen to be 6'5", 350 pounds. Just a sad looking offensive line. But let's keep it rolling. You just have to think the Jets made plays. I I want to say that. I don't want to take anything away from the Jets. They did what they had to do. The Jets made plays and they won their matchups. So let's talk about it. Aaron Rodgers did work. Aaron Rodgers went throughout the week pretty stoic, doing what he had to do. He came into this game saying he literally said he knew what he had to do to improve. He talked about every loss that the Jets had throughout the week, had throughout the year, this week, and he also talked about, hey, once we put it together, they're gonna be good. He came out, they executed, they called the right plays. He led his offense down. He even looked athletic running the ball. So Aaron Rodgers did work. It wasn't the Aaron Rodgers of old, but it was a solid 40-year-old Aaron Rodgers effort that everyone knew the Jets could have. The Jets, you knew the Jets had the talent. They had Wilson at receiver, Devontae Adams. They had Hall at running back. They had a solid offensive line. Good. Then you go to the defensive side of the ball. They had the DBs. They had the defensive line. The linebackers were sketchy, but the Texans' offensive line was so trash that their linebackers weren't even impacted. The Jets balled. Aaron Rodgers did work. The Texans did not. So you have to give Father Time his kudos to Aaron Rodgers. He drank a potion this week, some cayenne pepper and water. It worked. That whatever he did worked. Whatever the Texans did not work. And it leads me to think that we have more issues and more of a culture issue than I can ever take and I can imagine. Uh, I don't know. There has to be a coaching issue. Something has to be going wrong. What do y'all think? What do y'all think about it? Across all the platforms, YouTube, on X, on Twitch. What do you think about the Texans and this game? Do you think this is a culture issue? Do you think this is just purely an offensive line issue? Let me know down in the chat because I want to know. This is something that I love. I'm passionate about the Texans. I'm the number one global Texans fan. I'm streaming from Japan. I wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning and think about the Texans. So drop me a chat. Let me know what you think about this. I see people on different platforms. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. You hear the dog in the background going hard. Let's talk about another thing. I talked about this on my quick reaction, but CJ Stroud is CJ Stroud has had miscues throughout the games. I think that it's uncharacteristic, but I can see why. CJ Stroud he was off. He missed a couple of passes, but how much of that is just our poor offensive line? It was sad. So you go from Aaron Rodgers, 40-year-old veteran, to CJ Stroud, sophomore in the NFL, having a difficult go at it with a terrible offensive line. He had miscues, he had missed throws, but after I look at it, he was not comfortable in the pocket. He couldn't be comfortable. He had eight sacks on the night. Really seven, but I think they said eight when he ran out of bounds or something like that. But CJ Stroud had miscues and missed throws, and they just did not look like they had any type of cohesion for the Houston Texans. It was just a man, your nails hurt. It was just a difficult game for the Texans, but they were able to, come out this game, and hopefully CJ Stroud is healthy and able to get healthy throughout the week. So we're going into a bye week, and let's see what we can do. But we're gonna roll a little bit. So the Texans lost. They lost. It's done. Offensive line sucks. CJ Stroud had a few miscues, missed throws. You had a lot of poor play. Sorry, excuse the dog. A lot of poor play on the offensive side of the ball. Joe Mixon is a dog, and Joe Mixon, God damn, Joe Mixon's a dog. The Bobby Slowick sucks. So looking forward for the Texans will be something that nobody knows what can happen. They have a 10-day break, and we have concerns. Does Nick Casario get on the phone and get serious? Does he try to stick with Kenyon Green? I hope like hell they don't. Or is Patterson our starting left guard and they make that the last move? You think it could have been a plug and play, but it's not a plug and play offensive line at all. It's definitely not a plug and play offensive line. The Texans, you have to worry about competing for that solid playoff spot. I don't think we're going to lose the AFC South, but are we competing for this solid playoff spot? The Lions are the next game up on Sunday night prime time. How do you think we're going to fare against them? What do you think the changes that will be made against the Lions? The AFC, we're gonna fall down. The Lions look like a formidable challenge. Then rolling into Dallas, Dallas is gonna play us the same, if not at a higher level than the Jets. And then you're on to a stretch of games that will be difficult as well. The Jags look like they're gonna hit a stride, possibly. They possibly can. It's going to be tough for the Texans going far. It's just laughable with all the talent on the team. The 6-2 record, I see on X everybody talking about it was the most fraudulent team, 6-2 record that there ever was. But I mean, there's been worse teams. Let's be clear, there's been worse 6-2 teams. The Texans just have to get the offensive line right. If the offensive line plays at an average level, the Texans will be solid. That's all. If the offensive line plays average, put some dip in their mouth, put a little cowboy camouflage hat on. Let's get back to those rough and tumble offensive line. I'm tired of the dudes with scarves and purses. Let's go back to some rough and tumble offensive linemen, and that's going to change the look ahead for the Texans. They're everybody that's a Texans fan is concerned, should be concerned, and the Texans need to make a move that will one protect their investment in CJ Stroud, and two, give the fans something to look forward to. I am a Texans fan through and through, but watching this effort and the team that's on this field is embarrassing. I want more from the Texans. This is Houston. It's a football city. We have to get more from the Texans, especially offensively. Defense, I'm okay with. I can ride with 21 losing and the offense scoring 21 points with Devontae Adams, Brees Hall, Garrett Wilson, and Aaron Rodgers on the other side of the ball. I'm okay with a 21-point loss. That's fine. But I won't stand for, I can't say I'm acting like I'm on a football field, but I don't like having the offense just stalled out like that. So the Texans have to do better. And looking forward, doesn't look like the Lions game will be any better for us. The AFC, we are going to struggle with the top teams in the AFC, but I think we can come out the AFC South and kind of go into one of those wild card games and maybe make some noise if we get a better mentality going down the line. But also looking forward, I always look forward to this. I look forward to watching Joe Mixon ball out. That's my one pro for the Texans. My one pro this Texan, the one kudo I would have to give, and I look forward to is seeing Joe Mixon run hard for the team. Let's get it, Joe. Joe Main Mixon, Money Mixon, whatever they call him, has been a breath of fresh air and tenacity and grit for the offense. And looking forward to the rest of the season, I'm looking forward to seeing him run. I hope he breaks all kind of individual accolades because he's not getting what he needs from the team. I hope he just runs on and breaks all the individual accolades he can and gets all the individual accolades he can. I also hope that we get more from our defense, and hopefully one day CJ can put it together and we can be successful going down the stretch. So just a quick recap. In this, we recapped the Texans versus Jets terrible loss, 21-3, 21-13 to the Jets. We talked about the Texans offensive line, the offensive woes that we have. We also talked about Bobby Slowick. We talked about the second half just troubles the Texans have had throughout the season. We talked about what's causing the Texans to be in so much trouble, the depth that they're missing down. We also talked a little bit about the good things that the Jets did to beat the Texans. And then we did a look forward with the Texans. We're going to fish it out. And I'll say this: I did not hit. The over did not hit, nor did the Texans cover. So this was a bad week for betting or any parlays. I thought the Texans would at least cover the +2, but that did not happen. And I definitely thought we would have went over. And to be clear, The over could have hit had Miami hit the field goals, and then had the Jets scored that touchdown. Hey, it is what it is. But I'm gonna close this out. Follow on X, follow on IG at Sports Social TV, follow on subscribe on YouTube at Sports Social Live. I'm Lance Hayes at Sports Social Live. I'm out. Salute.